next presentation is by a home cook who started cooking sous vide in 2015. He made it an integral part of his daily cooking routine. As the co founder of the International Sous Vide Association, he's excited to help create a network to not only share knowledge with each other and learn from the foremost experts in the field, but also to facilitate in person engagement through conferences, meetups, and other means. So please help me welcome my co founder, Mike Lashardi.
Hey, everybody. Really excited to be with you this weekend. And this is a topic that I'm really quite passionate about. We're going to be talking just for a few minutes about some simple ways to kick up or enhance your favorite sous vide dishes. This weekend, we're talking a lot about meal prep. It's something that we all do. And really, I look at this presentation as ways to kind of keep things interesting, to bring new flavors into dishes that we've made before, and really just find some different ways to utilize all these perfect proteins and vegetables that we're cooking sous vide. So, really, this presentation is going to be about adding flavor, how to add textures, and even for some of these dishes, some visual appeal using a few different methods. All of these methods are adaptable for multiple dishes. The flavors are completely open to customization, so you can, change herbs and change flavorings to fit your family, to fit the dish that you're trying to create. And really, some of this is about bringing the fine dining experience home in just minutes. I don't know how many of you are Michelin starred chefs. I am not. And so to come up with just some of these ways to just take things up and elevate dishes at home is really something that's fun for me and something that I'm passionate about. So, first thing I want to talk about, the first method is pickling. I know a lot of people are very passionate about this. I love pickles of all sorts. Pickled onions are something that I almost always have on hand in my fridge because they go with such a variety of dishes. But what I love about pickles is there's so many flavor options. It's practically endless. You can do pretty much any vegetable, a lot of fruits as well. And for some ideas, Chelsea Cole's book, Everyday Sous Vide, which you can find at the isva.net/everyday sous vide. She's got a whole section there on pickles and some different brines and flavors that really kind of opened my eyes to really what you can do with this method. So the process is pretty simple. You're going to mix vinegar, generally at least 5%, um, for the concentration. You're going to mix some salt, sugar, herbs, and spices. It could be as simple as just vinegar and salt as well. You're going to put all those together. You're going to put it in a vacuum bag or a mason jar with the vegetables that you've cut and prepared. All of that's going to get cooked together at 183 Fahrenheit or 83 Celsius for about 30 minutes. And then you're going to chill that down with an ice bath, and it's ready to go and serve, store in your fridge, and use with a variety of dishes. So I want to share one that I came up with last year, or earlier this year, I think it was. And you can see with this dish, it obviously added some flavor that kind of fit the theme of these tacos. But I think it's also just visually striking. I did these particular ones in my chamber vacuum, which if you have one, you can do it without even cooking. Just mix the brine and your thin sliced vegetables, pull a vacuum on it, and you'll see these happen instantly. Um, but I thought they really took this Asian taco to the next level, and that's some Asian miso marinated rockfish, I think, underneath that I did. So, very simple recipe: a bunch of radishes sliced on a mandolin, 1 to 2 millimeters thick. Uh, Mix some rice vinegar with salt, sugar, garlic powder, and sesame oil until the salt and the sugar are dissolved. Dump that in the bag and move on with the process we just talked about. And, in about 30-35 minutes and then a quick chill, you've got a delicious garnish that you can use in a multitude of ways and dishes. So aioli, this is another method that I think has a lot of ways that it can be used in cooking with our sous vide. Classically, I know a lot of you classically trained chefs are going to go, aioli is garlic and oil only. And yes, that is true. Classically, it's done with a mortar pestle, a lot of elbow grease, and you come up with this really fine garlic dip. I think now we have in a lot of restaurants much more of a broad interpretation. And to me, on a lot of menus, when I see it, it's basically flavored mayo. So that's kind of my interpretation. I call a lot of things aioli that technically are not, but I think it's become a catch-all term for us, and that's how I'm using it here. What's great about these is it's super easy to change the flavors. I mean, the possibilities really are limitless with this. And just a note about food safety, you are using raw eggs, so especially if you are feeding somebody who might be immunocompromised, somebody who's pregnant, some kids, people who might be a little more prone to bad reactions to some of these bugs. You definitely want to pasteurize the eggs if you can. Some stores you can actually buy them that way, but since we sous vide, you can just do it at 135 Fahrenheit. Drop the eggs in from the fridge, cook them for 2 hours, ice bath, and you have a whole set of pasteurized eggs ready to go for any raw preparation. If you haven't done it before, when you crack the egg, you'll notice the white is a little cloudy, and that is normal. That's just the proteins reacting to the heat, but you use the egg just like a raw egg. Um, so you want to do that here. It takes about 2 minutes with an immersion blender. Basically, you're going to layer everything in a cup that barely fits the width of the immersion blender. You want to put the oil in last. I generally do the egg on the bottom. And then put the blender in, keep it on the bottom, and blend it until it's emulsified. Sometimes, depending on how thick it becomes, you have to pull the blender up a bit. Just don't go too high or you're going to shoot aioli all over your kitchen. This is one I came up with, and we actually did this demo for the Best of 2020 showcase that we did. And it's a sun-dried tomato aioli that I put on my pork Milanese burger. And you'll see here in the video in a second, it's one large egg, Dijon mustard, garlic cloves, lemon juice, and that with the salt, pepper, and the canola oil, that's just a standard mayo recipe. So you can just make mayonnaise with that and then add whatever flavoring. Sun-dried tomatoes and thyme are here. I've done it with capers, all sorts of different herbs, black garlic. I want to try one with bone marrow, replacing some of the oil and see what happens there. But here's just a quick video showing the process again from our showcase. Excuse my fat, ginormous hands that are going in the picture there, but you can see, I mean, it's on fast speed, obviously, but you can see it's literally dump and blend and it's ready to go with this beautiful, luscious dip. Um, so again, that's one of my other favorites. And then the last one we're going to talk about quickly is gremolata. Gremolata is a traditional Italian condiment. It's basically herbs and citrus zest, a little bit of olive oil, and typically it's used in really rich dishes that are cooked for a long time, like a Milanese ossobuco, soups and stews. Any vegetables in those, are braising for a really long time, and so they're going to have that more kind of sweet, roasted, braised flavor. The condiment here brings a fresh and a bright flavor addition to whatever you're putting it on. It's really good for fatty meats as well because it'll cut through that fat. So again, highly adaptable to your recipe. You can use nuts. Sometimes I like to mix them in, as you'll see, but I don't always. And classically, I don't think they have nuts in them. So basic process: finely mince the herbs and the other ingredients. If you're using nuts, you want to chop those up nice and fine as well, and then literally mix it all together with a little olive oil and serve it on top of whatever dish you're using. It's that simple. So again, as opposed to just sprinkling herbs, this is a way to bring something together and make a component. You can see in this dish, so this is the cook-along salmon that we're doing at the summit, and you can see it really adds to the visual appeal of the dish. Like when I look at this, I can taste that herby, that kind of citrusy bite cutting through all the fat before I've even had the dish. So I think that's where this really plays into kind of the visual appeal, and I think that's where some of these things they accent the flavor and the texture, but I think the visual is equally as important. So this was the pistachio bacon gremolata. Again, if you're VIP or pro, you'll see this in the cook along. But a little bit of bacon chopped up with some finely chopped Italian parsley, roasted unsalted pistachios. Hazelnuts also work really well with this. Um, and then zest of an orange. You can also use lemon or lime. A little bit of salt, some white pepper, and a little olive oil, and you've got a beautiful condiment to finish off any nice luxurious dish like this. So I hope that was helpful. These are some things that I've just been playing with over the years, and I know a lot of others have done much more experimenting than I have, but just some ways to really, I think, take otherwise just very standard and normal dishes. It takes from having components on a plate to having a composed and really complete meal for me or a dish. So, if you want to stay in touch, obviously, I'm with the ISVA. Y'all know where to find me there. And I'm also fairly active on Instagram at Suvangelist. So great to be with you this weekend. Really hope that you enjoy it and get a lot out of the content. And look forward to hanging out with you for the rest of the weekend.
Great tips there from Mike. I always like giving him a hard time, as you all know, but Mike works so hard, a lot behind the scenes. I'm just the one that's up here yammering all the time, but Mike puts all this together, organizes all the presenters, gets the videos in, gets everything set up, and then he also does a lot of presentations for us. So please give Mike some love in the comments. None of this would be possible if it wasn't for him, and I'm only saying that because I can't see his face. Oh no, here he comes, ruining the moment. Now I just want to insult you, but
I couldn't help it. I needed to give people a break from just looking at you for too long.
yep. So I love the gremolata that you used. I've been experimenting a lot more with that like style of condiments, like the tabbouleh, which has like mint with a little
Yeah.
bit of bulgur in it. The what's the other one that I use? The charmula, which is like cilantro and parsley with some lemon in it. Some things like that. They're so good, especially just whatever fresh herbs you have, some nuts or some grains, chop them up, and it's worked really well. Have there been any other like variations you've tried?
Yeah, I mean, I do chimichurri a lot, which is obviously a little bit different with the oil and the vinegar, but that's kind of one of my go-tos. Um, I really love hazelnuts in the cremolata, and I've done that a lot with like a Chilean sea bass. I really like it too. There's this, of course, now I moved to the West Coast, and there's no more Wegmans, so unfortunately, I can't get. They had this like. Couscous and grain mix, and I would do that with like a crispy skin Chilean sea bass, and then do a gremolata with like some pomegranate seeds and stuff. And oh, it's just so fun. I just like playing with the flavors, and like you said, it's kind of a hey, what's in the fridge? What can I pull out today?
I'm sure that most of the people watching have immersion blenders. If they don't, they should go buy one because they're super convenient.
Yep.
But how do you make an aioli if you don't have an immersion blender for the few people out there that might not have one?
Yeah, so any blender will work, other than like a closed one, like a bullet. I actually had a friend try one of our burgers from the Champions of Sous Vide book the other day, and he only had a magic bullet. It did not, the aioli did not work. But any blender, any food processor, the key is just to put everything in and then very slowly get the oil drizzled in there so it'll actually emulsify. The technique with the immersion blender works because you keep it on the bottom and it's slowly pulling the oil into the egg and making that immersion. So
Mhm.
it's as similar as just kind of drizzling in oil.
Aioli is something I need to experiment more with because I love a good aioli. I love mayonnaise. I've only tried it once and it broke, and now I think I know why because I didn't leave the thing at the bottom. So I should have turned to you when I first got started, Mike. Louis G says he prefers using the pestle and mortar best. You know, it only takes a good 30 minutes to get your aioli together.
Sounds like something I need to get my 6-year-old doing. Like, here, go sit in the corner and make the aioli. I love that.
What other some are what other flavors do you like to put into your aioli? I know you love experimenting with some different weird things occasionally. So is there anything that like you weren't sure if it was going to work, but it turned out really well?
Um, this one I knew would work, but I was on a capers kick for a while. I love capers, and so I did a piccata burger where I had capers in the burger patty, but then also put them in. And that one worked really well because I left the herbs out at first. So I mixed some herbs in, after to go with the burger into half of it. And then I used it the next day with some octopus and just stirred in some different herbs that worked there. So that one's been a lot of fun. The sun-dried tomato, I wasn't sure if it was going to work because they're so dry and chunky. So I was pleasantly surprised that one came together. Like I said, I want to try bone marrow and see, because you roast it, you get that kind of that oily texture and just that like richness. And I'm like, oh, that I've seen bone marrow butter before, but I've never seen it done in an aioli, and just curious if it'll work. That one's probably my biggest, like, okay, this is my biggest chance for failure.
Yeah, capers are great. I think they add so much flavor. Valerie says she loves the crispy fried capers, just in olive oil, little flavor bombs you can put on the top of your food.
So, funny story there. I recorded this
Oh yeah,
session.
I didn't even purposely set you up for failure there. I missed a great opportunity, but
No,
just
but
innately I insult you. This is great.
Valerie took it for you, so
Yeah.
that's okay. I'm shameless with this stuff. You'll see in the cook along, I live by the quote that not all of us can be Thomas Keller. So I recorded this thing, and I had the control freak next to me, and I was holding some oil because the last demo as part of this presentation was supposed to be fried capers. I love it because you put them in the oil, they blossom out almost like little flowers, and they're really pretty and they're really crispy and salty, and it's just awesome. Um, but at the end, I wasn't paying attention and I dumped too many in. Apparently, I hadn't dried them enough. And so the pot overflowed all over my brand new control freak, all over my brand new kitchen. And so I'm like, okay, I'll just chop that out. Well, then I'm in the video with half of it with this control freak with oil, and then half of it me demoing all this stuff. I'm like, well, everybody's going to be like, why is the control freak there? so so yes, I typically do my fried capers in like a frying pan, and I was like, well, I'm going to try the oil probe on the control freak and see. And it was a tall and skinny, and I'm like, okay, maybe not the best decision. But yes, all that to say, I love fried capers. It's one of my favorite garnishes. They're so good.
Raphael said, he says, Mike, so I heard you do sous vide game meat. He has a very specific question about roe deer front leg. So a lot of small muscles with a lot of connective tissue, but the meat itself is lean. Can it be sous vide to a texture of fall apart? He's worried that because it's lean, it might get dry. But if you go too long, it might get mushy with a livery taste.
That's a really good question. I'm going to look on Instagram right now. It's one of my first posts on here, so I don't exactly remember, but I did an antelope flat iron one time and I made tacos with it. Um, and so this will probably put you on the edge of where it's like falling apart. But I would probably go around like 150, because it's so lean. I want to keep that juiciness there. And I feel like if you go higher than that, you're going to lose some of it. It may not completely fall apart, but I think it would be easy enough to, pull or chop at least for like a taco or something. And I think I did like 24 hours on that. Um, I A lot of times I haven't done that specific cut, but you might need to go more like a 48 even, or a 36, because a lot of shanks, I did an alpaca shank once for 24 hours and did like an alpaca benedict, and it was so tough it wasn't there yet. So those, I would think if it's like a front leg, maybe a little longer, but again, that's just me kind of spitballing and guessing. I haven't done that cut.
Yeah, it's. I talked a little bit about temperatures at the last summit, about kind of where these breakdowns are, and like Mike's saying, at 154 there is a real kind of change in the meat. Above 154, the proteins really start to change. The connective tissue really starts to change very quickly, and at like 150, that doesn't happen nearly as fast. So there's a vast difference between like 150 and 160 in the final outcome of the meat. I like to picture like 150 is almost like a perfect braise that you're starting to pull apart. You're starting to have the connective tissue broken down, but it's not like shreddable. It's not falling apart. And so you can tend to get a little more breakdown of the food without it drying out nearly as much. I think you lose about 50% more liquid once you go above that the 154 line, so it dries it out pretty quick. So that's one of my tent poles if I'm trying something, is a 150 is a great kind of, don't want it to be shreddable, but you want it to taste like a braised like texture kind of.
Yep, absolutely. I use that temperature a lot for like pork shoulder and all that kind of stuff. It works really well, and it's just right on the edge there of where it's perfectly shreddable. It's still mostly shreddable there. So
Yep. Yeah, it's a good texture. It's what I do pot roast at. It's what I
yep,
do barbecue brisket at. It's what I do ribs at before I like chill them and then reheat them on the grill or on the smoker. It's
yep,
one of my favorite things to do. Well,
yep.
Michael, thank you very much for coming up, answering some questions. A great video as always, sharing some great some flavor bombs, ways that you can kick up your flavor, which you are great at. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Now get back behind the scenes where you belong. It's always great seeing Mike his videos. I remember when he was just a wee lass a few years ago. It had never been on camera before, and now he does a great job and keeps improving every time he does something, even when he's flooding his his new kitchen with hot oil. But Mike does a great job, and we always appreciate seeing all the great stuff that when he gets in front of the camera as well.